You know, not only is Philly has changed physically, but I think to some extent, it's funny you asked this, I've been thinking about urban environments and their kind of evolution and transition. I think to some extent, what I'm responding to now is being someone whose interests are much wider than when I first started writing about Philadelphia, which was very much about a past and seeing a way of life and a culture kind of tell the various narratives and stories of individuals. Whereas now, because I live in Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont, so much of what I notice about Philadelphia has to do with its visual representation. And having recently gone back and forth a couple times over the past 6 months, it is a landscape that has balanced its this kind of proclivity towards the natural spaces, parks, these squares, but also kind of influx of new communities. So I'm interested when, let's say when I was growing up, how Hmong and Vietnamese refugees kind of impact the actual physical landscape of a place, either through kind of gardening or temples or other means by which people carry a previous landscape with them to kind of bring that to bear. And so I've been kind of noticing that most of the story that we tell with cities has to do with gentrification and high rises, but I'm really interested in how landscapes are changed by cultural practices and religious beliefs or other kind of virtues or values that are important to people. Just recently, having kind of reread some of my older poems, I realized that what I've done in my work to some extent is create a gallery of individuals for whom, if the poem did not exist, it's possible that they may be lost to my own personal history. And it's one of the fascinating aspects of art, whether it's visual or music or poem. It encapsulates time and it transfers time to the space in which the poem is encountered by someone else outside of it. And so here I am reading back on these individuals who are part of my life, and it triggers all sorts of wonderful memories. And art is not only transformative, but it also transports. So that gallery is a beloved gallery for me, because in writing about my grandfather or writing about my grandmother or someone who was older than me in the neighborhood, they helped to create the kind of interior life that I live today. So I also have more portraits that I need to write. I was just talking to a dear writer friend of mine that it's interesting how projects emerge in your imagination and dislodge your other kind of what seemed important to you. but I'm circling back to those particular narratives and those particular poems, and very excited by that, because there's a lot of note-taking happening, which in of itself is its own reward. Yeah. Well, each poem is individuated at the moment of creation. There was a time in which it was important to me to make a sound through the formal structure of a poem. And I'm less interested in that now, and I'm kind of fine-tuned to poems, particularly in their early stages of composition. I'm now at a point of trying to use the creative process to mine how I feel, how I think on a particular subject. And so how the poems come together these days is less predetermined, and because I've driven the bike around the block many different times, it's almost intuitive how it unfolds. What I'm doing, however, is I'm trying to listen to these kind of inner urges. I'm trying to get inside the language and listen to what is demanding of this material at the level of metaphor and at the level of sound. Those are the two things that are very important to me. But I haven't developed a systemic way of composing poems. Each poem kind of demands its own particular shape and coming into the birth. Your birth is different from my birth. You probably wailed quite louder than I did, or maybe, you know, mine was a high shrieks and yours, who knows, right? So similarly with poems.